In 2005, Nintendo released the Gameboy Micro. Unfortunately, it wasn't a hit like its predecessors, so Nintendo limited aftermarket clip-on accessories. The only accessories that come to mind are the grip speaker and the magnifier, which are both extremely hard to find. So we set out to create the ultimate Gameboy Micro using aftermarket Game Boy Advance parts. We started by using the Mad Cow Magic Editor 3. This third-party aftermarket device simply plugs into the bottom cartridge slot of a Game Boy Advance or Game Boy Micro system, followed by the cartridge you'd like to manipulate on top. Upon booting, you're presented with 3 language options, followed by 3 task options. 1 to either play the game, 2 to input a code, or 3 to search for a code on the cartridge. Option 1 presents a list of pre-loaded cheat codes for some selected cartridges, while Option 2 searches for possible cheat codes within the cartridge inserted. Developed by Radica in 2003, the GameStar was every Game Boy Advance SP player's dream aftermarket accessory. This accessory featured 3 Game Boy Advance cartridge slots, each which could be selected by a toggle switch located on the left-hand side. The accessory had a locking device and simply plugged into the cartridge slot of your Game Boy Advance SP. With the help of the Magic Editor 3, we are now able to connect the GameStar to the Game Boy Micro system. Followed by inserting the game cartridge into port 2 of the GameStar. But of course, we couldn't stop there. We followed it up with the official Nintendo EReader. Released in 2001 by Nintendo, this device was intended for the Game Boy Advance consoles. This device simply plugs into the cartridge slot of the Game Boy Advance, and with the use of special EReader cards, you're able to unlock special features such as mini-games and extra levels to your pre-existing games. And if you're wondering, yes, it does function without connecting the communication port. Some of you may remember or have even owned this device. You guessed it, the Boombox FM radio tuner. This nifty device plugged into the side of the communication port of your Game Boy Color or Game Boy Advance console and was able to pick up FM radio frequency. It featured a volume slider and ear jack located on the side. It's pleasing to see that the Game Boy Color is making a comeback. In the past year, talented modders have upgraded this accessory, bringing it to the 21st century. So how couldn't we add this to our mod? If you're enjoying this video, now's the perfect time to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. The final assembled build comes in just over 30 centimeters in length, or a foot long. And the final weight comes in at just over 400 grams, which is close to 1 pound. And now the question you've probably all been asking yourself, will the console power up? Well, let's see. We'll switch the GameStar over to port 2 and turn it on. And amazingly, the console does power up and load the cartridge. However, it pauses with a RAM error. We did try this multiple times with several different cartridges and only had 1 successful load. Next, we switched the GameStar over to cartridge slot 1 to test the EReader. And unsurprisingly, it didn't boot at all. Finally, we decided to test cartridge slot 3 with the Game Boy camera. And sadly, it didn't boot either.